A 14-year-old leaving for school. It's something that happens countless times in the country and around the world. But as we look at this video, we're actually watching the last trace of Aaliyah Ramirez. From where that video ends to the bus stop that Aaliyah was going towards is only about a 5-minute walk, only a few blocks from where she's living. So what happened? There are a lot of different aspects to this story that might be contributing factors or might not. Is this a kidnapping situation? Is this a teen looking to get away from her home life? We're going to go through all that and more as we turn on the searchlight for Aaliyah Ramirez. Happy Friday, everyone. John Lorden here with another episode of Brainscratch Searchlight. Back at full health. Had to take a little time off this week, but I appreciate your understanding and patience with that. We've got a case to get into. Let's go ahead and jump right into it, starting with the NamUs profile for Aaliyah Marie Ramirez. Date of last contact is April 27th, 2021, and we're talking about a 14-year-old here, 2.5 months missing. If she did leave of her own accord, how is she taking care of herself? If she didn't, what's happening? Big cause for concern when we're getting this far out on a missing persons case of this nature. Missing from Syracuse, Indiana. We can see it's already been filed with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children as well. For her demographics, 14 years old, female, stands at 5 foot 9 inches tall, weighs from 135 to 140 pounds. For race, ethnicity, they've got it listed as white, Caucasian, black, African American, and Hispanic Latino. Circumstances, date of last contact, once again, April 27th. The NamUs case created very quickly. I'm not sure if Indiana is one of the states where law enforcement is mandated to enter it into NamUs. I wouldn't be surprised based on how quick this was created. Circumstances of disappearance. Now here, I think because this was filed so quickly, the details aren't going to match up super close. I'll point out the main thing. The missing person, Aaliyah Marie Ramirez, was last seen walking away from a Syracuse, Indiana bus stop at 8:01 a.m. on Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. I have not seen any information to see that she was actually spotted at the bus stop. I am curious about that because when you think about a kid going to get on a bus for school, I know when I would go to the bus stop, there was always other kids there waiting, unless I was being extremely early for some reason. But typically a crowd of kids will gather there. The path that we're going to see once we get to the map should show that the bus stop has a pretty good view of, there's really only 2 streets that she's walking on. And considering it's only a few blocks, if she made it to the second street and there was kids at the bus stop, you really get the sense that someone should have seen something. Outside of that, on one side of that bus stop is a fire station. On the other side is the police station. So additional cameras there. We're not hearing about those cameras picking up anything. So it makes you wonder if this is an abduction, it had to happen extremely close to her house. She was wearing a black zip-up jacket, gray and white sweatpants, and a purple Nike brand backpack. She's possibly en route to Marion, Indiana, and or Palm Beach County, Florida. So, you guys know that when I'm looking into these cases, I really try to stick to the facts. Social information on this case, from what I can tell, I haven't dug into it a whole lot in Facebook, but from what I'm reading at like the threads at Web Sleuths about the conversation at Facebook, there's a lot of high family drama that is getting tangled up in this story. And honestly, I don't think any of us know, is that really related to this case or not? It might be. So, of course, I'm going to just lightly touch on that as we're going through. But please keep in mind that information, it's not the same as the information we're getting directly from law enforcement put out through the media. The general gist that I'm getting of why they're looking in the Palm Beach County, Florida area is because she has family that lives out there. I believe it is her grandmother on her mother's side. And it seems like for a period of time, and I'm seeing this both reported on Web Sleuths, and also Nancy Grace has released a podcast on this. They touched on this as well. For a period of time, she did live with that grandmother. And while she was living with that grandmother, it seems like she struck up a relationship with a boy that was living next door, a 15-year-old. So we're wondering, is that some aspect in terms of what's motivating her to leave? I've seen some documentation, it looks like it's from courts, that is effectively saying that she's not allowed to spend time with her grandmother or that boy anymore. But I'm also hearing that there's kind of a big custody battle that's going on in this family. And I'm not talking about between her mother and her father. It's like other family members that are trying to give her a different place to live away from her mother and father. I really don't want to dive into it much more than that, because honestly, I don't know how much of a factor it is. But I can tell you, as we're going through these stories, you're going to feel like there's a big hole in them. And it's really, I think, that piece of the puzzle. And if you think about a situation like that, where you've got potential different sides of the family pulling on this 14-year-old in terms, it's like a tug of war that she's literally the rope in. What outcome could happen there? What investigative measures can be taken with that? On the Nancy Grace podcast, they were all pretty certain, at least Nancy was for sure, that the boyfriend has been checked out or someone has visited the home there. I don't know if it's the boyfriend's home. We will hear that there was one home that was searched in that area, but there's also some other places that are coming up as possible places that she could have gone to as well. There's not enough information to really know what's driving the investigation in those directions. But let's go ahead and learn about where this case starts. Syracuse is a town in Turkey Creek Township, Kosciuszko County, in the U.S. state of Indiana. The population was 2,810 at the 2010 census, so fairly small town, likely named after the city of Syracuse, New York. Syracuse has a total area of just over 2 square miles, so small town in terms of footprint, small town in terms of community, but usually in towns like that, you also have kind of a tighter community. And it's kind of curious that I haven't seen any information about anyone really witnessing her on this walk after this footage. I want to check out this video clip again because I'm always looking for intent. And I'm wondering, is this a girl that is truly leaving home knowing that she's not coming back to that home? Or is she simply heading to the bus stop to go to school? From what we can see here, she's got a mask on. She's got a backpack. And she's carrying a bag. I believe this bag is her laptop bag. She's got a school-issued Chromebook, I believe. There is something else she's carrying, some type of, I don't know if it's a white plastic bag. It could be something that she's got in there for lunch. I'm not sure. But just looking at this, her book bag looks like a normal book bag to me. Looks like it might have a typical load. She's an 8th grader at this point. She's probably got a decent number of books. Doesn't look really like it has been loaded with everything that's important to her that she, might need or want if she's truly never coming back to this home again. But another thing that I find interesting for me personally, and I don't know if this is just me, when I have left a place that meant something to me, even if I didn't have a great feeling about it, I always kind of have this moment of just looking back and just kind of taking it in one last time. That might be something that's just me, but the intent that I'm seeing her, how she's walking away, is just fairly typical. Looks like a kid walking to school. Interesting there. Kind of looks like she's checking her pocket as she's walking up. And I'm just interested in that because another thing that came out from the Nancy Grace podcast, there's a friend of hers from dance. I guess she really likes to learn and perform dance. And that's raised a whole community in terms of the search efforts, which I think is awesome. But reportedly, this friend said on the Nancy Grace podcast that her father had taken away her cell phone but she might have had another one. And I'm seeing in a few places where it's being referred to as a burner, like a phone that you would buy at a 7-Eleven or a convenience store that you don't have a contract for. Her friend also mentioned that it might be her aunt that actually bought that phone for her. But then I heard other commentary in that episode. It's tough because they have a lot of experts in some of those shows, and it sometimes seems like they're not all running on the same information. But I'm not 100% sure that the aunt bought it for her, but it seems like she likely has another phone, and it just seems like, I don't know, is that something that she's kind of checking for in her pocket as she's walking away? Or is she just putting her hand in her pocket? Looks like it might be staying there for the rest of this walk. Maybe it's just a warm place to keep your hand. I don't know. Let's start getting to the official articles and the official information. First one is from April 28th from ABC 57. Syracuse Police Department is asking for the public's help in finding a teenager. 14-year-old Aaliyah Ramirez was listed as a runaway, missing, and is potentially in danger. She was last seen walking away from her residence on Parkway Drive in Syracuse at around 8 a.m. Tuesday. So it seems like really early in this, police are also heavily considering the possibility that she is a runaway. And some of those that court documentation that I've seen in threads that's being talked about, the dates on that seem like they're only a few weeks before this, I believe. So that might be why it's such a strong consideration. She filed her own grievance with the judge, basically saying that she does believe she should go and live with her aunt. So with that all kind of swirling around her life at the time of this disappearance, seems like it's probably a lead that you're certainly going to look into, might be your primary lead for a period of time. Seems like that changes, though, at least through the information that comes out here in the press. Police said her potential destination could be in the Marion, Indiana, or Palm Beach County, Florida areas. Now, let's take a look at the map just to get a sense of where this is happening. First of all, this is about 150 miles north of Indianapolis, just to give you some sense of where in Indiana it is. Definitely headed towards the northern tip of it. Her home is on North Parkway Drive. And from what I understand, the bus stop is right over here. So it's literally, it looks like it's about 3 blocks of a walk. And like I mentioned, to the left, even though this is listed as a Quick Mart, this is actually the fire station here, and the police station is over here. It does come up if you zoom in on it enough. But from what I understand, the bus stop is on East Henry Street, and I'm not sure how far up it is. I've only seen kind of a hand-drawn map on it, but it's somewhere right along here. So it does, there is a gas station here. So if she did kind of walk over to West Henry Street, cut up towards the buses, and then made a left, I'm pretty sure that a camera at the gas station would have caught her. And I'm pretty sure law enforcement would come out with that and say, we know that she decided to go somewhere else because we saw her on foot. She was walking away in this direction. They did not say that. Basically, we've got that doorbell cam type footage from this area, and that's it. She walks out of frame. This is just the direction she's supposed to be going. Could she have made a right? Possibly. That would put her on North Hickory. There is also a park that is right here, just right across from there. Is that potentially a meetup area? If she was planning on leaving, had arranged for a ride to be there, something like that. Now, I've heard some people kind of debate the boyfriend. This boyfriend from Florida, could he have something to do with it? He's 15 years old. She's 14 years old. So arranging for transportation and all that kind of stuff, just a bit of a challenge at that age as well. But that's the map. Pretty tough to understand how such a short distance turns into a disappearance like that. But we're going to see that that's not always abnormal. Actually, the last Searchlight episode we talked about a statistic on that as well, about how children go missing, and it's usually a large percentage of it is within about a quarter mile of the home. Over at ABC 57, silver alert declared for missing Syracuse teen. A statewide silver alert has been declared for 14-year-old Aaliyah Ramirez. Ramirez is believed to be in danger. Now, even if we are considering this situation, family struggle, someone else wants her to come live with them, something like that, how would that lead you to believe she's in danger? I don't know. So it seems like fairly early on here, there's either another consideration or some new piece of information that has come into the investigation that is, I think it's spinning them in a different direction pretty quickly. Also, for a silver alert, I'm just curious what the conditions are because, first of all, we have these different alerts and they kind of have different rules based on the state. For Indiana in particular, the person must be a missing endangered adult, missing endangered child, or high-risk missing person, or have a mental impairment validated through a credible medical authority. I haven't heard of anything along those lines in terms of an official diagnosis for her. So possibly fitting into high-risk missing person. There must be enough descriptive information to believe the broadcast will help. Request must be recommended by the law enforcement agency of jurisdiction, and the person has to be entered into the NCIC with a specific message. So seems like the silver alert criteria relatively low. Amber alert criteria typically higher. In most states, you need to actually have some description of like the person that they're with, the vehicle that they've taken, something along those lines that is kind of immediately actionable. But for this silver alert, just I think that's why they went with this level of alert. And from what I understand, I don't know if that alert has ever ceased. I think it might still be in silver alert status. I know it carries on for a matter of weeks because they keep talking about it in the articles, but I don't see any official, this has been removed from silver alert. On April 30th, we get an update. Police are still searching. The following release was issued by the Syracuse Police Department. The Syracuse Police Department is still currently investigating the whereabouts of Aaliyah M. Ramirez. The Syracuse Police Department is currently working with local, state, and federal authorities in locating Aaliyah Ramirez. She is currently listed as a runaway/missing. And it's interesting that combo of words, some news agencies will take that and kind of run with it in a certain direction. Like this same article that actually published that earlier states, they say she's a runaway. Kind of. They're really saying that that's a possibility. When I read this, I was like, oh, where's the quote? Like, I want to see where they're talking about that they know she's a runaway or they think she's a runaway. Did she leave a letter behind or something along those lines? I can't find any of that. It looks like it's based specifically just on the phrasing of she's currently listed as a runaway/missing. And of course, you have family members very concerned as well. Let's listen to a little audio of her mother here speaking about this case over at CBS 12 News.
Like I said, Aaliyah's so funny and so outgoing, really loving and really kind. And I think she's been really confused here recently.
Confused in which way?
I can't speak a lot on that because it doesn't really matter right now. We just want to get her home.
So the living situation is Aaliyah's parents are split up. Mother lives about 2.5 hours away. Aaliyah lives with her father. And I'm not sure if it's just a younger sister or younger sisters. I'm kind of seeing it reported both ways. As to the confusion she was referring to, I don't know if that is necessarily about the kind of custody stuff that's going on. I kind of suspect it is, but obviously it's just not clear enough to make a firm call on that. Another thank you to ABC 57. They've really been reporting on this case strongly. A statewide silver alert was declared and still continues on almost a week later. She's just not one to have any issues and whatnot like this before, Aaliyah's aunt, Alyssa Sands, says. Now, this is the aunt that it seems like Aaliyah wanted to go and live with. Syracuse police officials say she is believed to be in danger. There it is again, and I'm not quite sure if it is this kind of family pull situation. I don't see that as being a strong indicator that she's in danger. I'm not sure if they're leaning more towards some other type of situation, like a possible abduction or something. The officials tell ABC 57 News they originally suspected this to be a runaway case, but because they've gotten nowhere with leads, they are no longer sure that's the case. So fairly strong there that it seems like they did think this is a situation kind of related to her home life and her wanting to change that or get away from that in some way. But as they started investigating that, it just didn't pan out. Quote, "I'm not for sure if she ran or if somebody grabbed her," her aunt, Sands, said. "This has been like an issue with custody and stuff like that, and I think it got the best of her, and I think this is what happens when people don't listen to kids. I just want to know when she went missing, what happened before she went missing, what led up to it. She loves dance. She always gets good grades. I mean, all around, she's a really good kid," her aunt said. "I feel like with more people helping, the better." And that's another thing. There are some pretty clear messages coming from the family and actually from law enforcement about asking the internet for help to really get her image out there and to share this story, where in the Summer Wells case that we covered 2 weeks ago, seems like things were a little different. Law enforcement a little frustrated with the level of exposure and coverage in that case. In this case, it's the exact opposite side of that coin. They're looking for it. So over at WNDU, we get a new location added to the mix. Once again, I don't know why, but these are important. Police released new information saying she may be in Marion, Indiana, Palm Beach County, Florida. We mentioned those before, but now they've also included the state of Georgia. Those who knew Aaliyah from a dance studio she's been a part of for years describe her as a kind and selfless girl, and they say they were shocked when they learned of her disappearance. "I really, really need her home. I need her home for me. I need her home for her family, for herself, her safety," said Katie Reynolds, who danced with Aaliyah. And Katie has been working very hard, doing a lot of interviews, trying to help raise exposure on this, and also taking posters out, being driven all over the state, getting that information out there as well. I just really appreciate that Aaliyah has friends like this that are rallying for her and really trying to help. Reynolds and others say they're doing everything they can, from posting on social media to handing out hundreds of flyers. They need people to share Aaliyah's picture and information in hopes of getting her home safe. "Whatever has happened, whatever is going on, I just really hope that she's okay, and I want her to be returned to safety," Aaliyah's ballet instructor, Haley Toy, said. And Aaliyah's dance instructor has played a pretty important role in this case, as we're going to learn from this article. New video shows last moments of Syracuse teen before disappearance. It's the same video that we've already watched a few times, but her ballet instructor, Haley Toy, obtained the video from a neighbor who lives in the same complex as Ramirez and agreed to share the video with 16 News Now. So that's how the video actually gets out into the media. Tuesday morning, she was getting ready to go to school, and we know that she did not get on the bus, Toy says. Toy says the walk from Aaliyah's home is just a few blocks away from her bus stop. So when we've got all these different locations, of course, we have law enforcement cooperating and trying to help in different locations as well. And that's what we have here, as reported by CW34.com. Officials say the investigation is leading them to Palm Beach County. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office says it's assisting police in Indiana with the investigation, but it has no leads at this time. A home in Boynton Beach was searched by the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, but there was no sign of the teenager. And once again, I don't know if that is the grandmother's home. I don't know if that's the boyfriend's home. I don't know if it's someone outside of that. We just know that they also happen to live in this area. Court documents from 2015 show that the 14-year-old's father was no longer granted overnight parental privileges, and visitations had to be monitored. So that's another piece of this puzzle, but I don't know that this really ties in to her disappearance super directly. The only thing I can figure is that this custody battle that kind of spun up with the outside family members, and by outside I just mean not the mother and the father, it had to be motivated by something. Generally, I don't think judges just kind of like, yeah, go live with your grandmother for a bit while we, process this out in court. I think there has to be a pretty strong threat or situation in the home that they're concerned about. I think that's why this is coming up. So it seems like a number of years ago, her father got into some type of trouble, and that kind of broke his visitation privileges. She wasn't able to spend the night in his home anymore. From what I understand, and I haven't looked a whole lot into the court documentation, I do believe that has been corrected or fixed. And ultimately, her mother could decide where she was going to live, if it was with her or with her father, and her mother opted for her to live with her father. So that's kind of how it shook out. I think this is just a factor in what kind of started, or maybe not started, but was a contributing factor in part of this family dispute that's been going on around where Aaliyah is living. Now, over at WPTV, and I'm telling you, some of these articles, it's like they're just pieces of information. Like all the linkage or understanding that you would expect to go from one piece to the other just is not there. So in this West Palm Beach article, we just get one other thing that might be about that search. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office told WPTV deputies went to the teen's relative home, but Aaliyah was not there. I don't know if that's the same as the search that they've mentioned before, or if that was just a door knock. Seems like that's probably at her grandmother's house, but can't be 100% with the way this information is being presented. On Saturday, May 8th, as you can see in the kind of still shot here, they did hold a candlelight vigil. Family and friends held a candlelight vigil. They said that Aaliyah is a kind and goofy girl and a talented dancer. They held this vigil to remind her how important she is to the community. And if you look into this case for yourself and go through this media around it, you're going to see a lot of messages direct to her. I think because there's a pretty high probability that this is a runaway situation. You'll see that there's family and friends. They just want her to know how much they care. And it's a tough situation because when you see it in her own words, which we're going to get to here in a few moments, you're not sure. Like I feel split in terms of, should she really go back to that house necessarily? Like if there's other places, it's hard though, because you're talking about a 14-year-old. And I don't know about you guys, but me being in that age, I went through some tough stuff. My parents actually split up when I was 14. I had feelings of like, I don't want to live with this one. I don't want to live with that one. Wanting to go live with an aunt or an uncle. I don't know that that's entirely it's not super strange to me for that. But it's just tough when you have a kid in a situation where they feel like, maybe they're not being taken care of properly or something along those lines. How do you appeal to them? I don't know, but I'm hoping that Aaliyah is out there. I'm hoping that she's watching all these messages from her dance instructor, from her dance friends, from her own family, and that maybe that will help open a door to her coming back into their lives if this really is a decision that she's made to actually step away from them. But I don't know. Continuing on to NBCnews.com, I always call her out. She does amazing work. Huge thank you to Andrea Cavalier for covering this. 3 weeks have passed without any sign of the teen. I just want my daughter back home, Aaliyah's father, Anthony Ramirez, told Dateline. I want her found safe. Anthony told Dateline that everything was fine with his daughter and that he has no reason to think she would have run away. Now, I believe Anthony's talking about in the immediate time frame, because in his example here, he's actually even talking about the day before. Like I mentioned, some of the court stuff that I'm seeing, I think that was kind of an ongoing process. I don't know how long it was ongoing, but some of the dates that I'm seeing around that are very early in April. So I don't know that that was all really settled out, and where she was emotionally with that, of course, we have no idea. It was a total normal day, he said, adding that the night before, Aaliyah had called him into her room, excited to talk to him about something she had seen in the news regarding a UFC fighter who had been injured just days prior. The next day, she was gone. Anthony works as a traveling welder. I don't know if that means that he stays away from home for periods of time or not. I can't think of when I was 14. I don't know if my parents were really leaving me at home for kind of overnights on that. And I don't know if that's necessarily, it's just strange because I've seen it described a few different ways. Sometimes they just say he's a welder. Dateline calls out traveling welder. I would think that meant that he probably stays away from home, but he said that he believes someone has taken his daughter. As a father, I just knew something was wrong. She's in trouble and we need to get her home safe. Her father also believes she may be in Florida and being held against her will. So that's kind of an interesting mix in terms of this, because now we're talking about a situation where she's close to where she was living before, at least in the same state. So it seems like there's some linkage to that, but also being held against her will. Kind of makes you wonder if there was some other people she was interacting with when she was living out there, and that's who he's worried about. Maybe not a 15-year-old boyfriend necessarily, but someone else. Certainly a possibility. Aaliyah's mother, Ashley Aspey, who lives about 2 hours away in Hartford City, Indiana, told Dateline that their family dynamic is complicated and there have been accusations, but she hopes what she says are upcoming polygraph tests being done by the police will clear up the drama. It is really unfortunate in cases like this when interpersonal dynamics and drama of that nature come into play, because they pull focus like nothing else. And if you want an example of that, just run a search on Aaliyah's name on Facebook. There are now several groups, because it seems like one group had to go private, probably because there was a lot of people that were kind of trolling on the family drama aspect. Now there's other groups saying, hey, we're going to keep it positive over here and talk about this case. There's other groups, I don't know what their focus is necessarily, but you can see the conversation is fractured. And it's really a shame, because there should be kind of one home place, one central, we're the official Facebook page for this or website for this. We're the family approved. If there's searches happening, we're the ones organizing them. If there's fundraisers going on, this is where you're going to find out about them. There's this fracture that's happening around this case. I think it is related to that aspect of the family drama. And that's not, how can you can't blame a family and say, wow, you guys are going through all this kind of terrible stuff, and now that's clouding the disappearance of your loved one. Families go through terrible stuff. That's just a fact of life. But it does throw in this big mix in terms of, when you have social media and this aspect of people talking about the case and theorizing about the case and things of that nature, digging into those family disputes and then kind of bringing them as points of discussion in a disappearance where it might not be related to it at all. It might not. And I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm completely split down the middle as this with this as well. I'm trying to temper kind of both sides to be fair to both sides of that coin. And there's other possibilities outside of that I think we lose consideration of because of how strong we drive towards everybody. There's just a really strong pull. There's a really strong pull to drama of that nature. And when a story goes public like this, it's a shame, because we might be missing the ball. We might be looking in the complete wrong direction. And we can see, at least based on the very limited information that's coming from the police department so far, it seems like they got pulled into that really early on. I think they got out of it fairly early on as well. But at least based on what I'm seeing in terms of social commentary on this, the rest of the world isn't moving along as quickly on that aspect. After being homeschooled for years, Aaliyah began going to public school and had really excelled, her mother added, getting all A's on her last report card. Her father told Dateline that his daughter spent a lot of time with dance lessons, but that they had also spent time together riding mini bikes and fishing from his bass boat. Finally, as we hit the 1 month mark, we actually have law enforcement speaking directly to the press. So we got some quotes here. 1 month after a 14-year-old Kosciuszko County girl disappeared, police say they're still actively searching for her and believe she has left Indiana. Syracuse Police Chief Jim Lane said, "There's definitely an urgency in locating her. We're giving it everything we have. We're working with Indiana State Police, utilizing all the tools at our disposal. We started investigating this on day one and don't plan on stopping until we locate her." Now, that's another thing that I'm just a little concerned about when we're talking about communities of this size. Syracuse, a town of not even 3,000 people. What is the police department like in that? Like, what size? I'm curious, because I've seen video footage of Jim Lane and the way he's dressed. Sometimes I'll see a police chief and they're pretty formal in terms of how they dress. Jim Lane looks like he's dressed to go and answer a call right now. Like, he's got the bulletproof jacket, he's got a body cam that he's wearing on him, not the traditional thing that I see for kind of a bigger city police chief. So I'm just curious if we can see if there's any stats on how big the department is. Are we talking, a 12-man department? Well, I wasn't too far off. Here, there's a profile at policeone.com for the Syracuse Police Department in Indiana. Number of officers, 10. So calling in help from the ISP certainly sounds like a great idea and makes a lot of sense. On top of that, there was a pretty big point brought up on the Nancy Grace podcast as well. If everyone is so certain that she is no longer in the state, where's the FBI involvement? I do think that is a really good question, because pretty much moving across state lines, that should enable the FBI to take action with this case. And I'm not really seeing that in terms of the media that's come out as well. The chief asks that you share information about Aaliyah on your social media pages. Hopefully it will reach the right person, he said. And of course, we've got the phone number down below if you have information. It's also in the description box down below. We've got the case number down there. We've got a few other different ways where you can send tips in as well. But we need help raising exposure to this case. The police chief himself is asking for it. And in particular, because we don't know where she is, but they don't think she's necessarily in Indiana. So if you have friends in Georgia or Florida in particular, please share this video with them there. And quite honestly, she might be outside of those areas too, but I'm just really trying to focus on the spots that we've heard about through the media. Chief Lane said the Ramirez family is cooperating in the investigation and that everyone wants Aaliyah to be found safe. And I don't doubt that on any front. A little more detail here now that the chief is kind of speaking publicly. He said the department is still investigating Ramirez's disappearance along with Indiana State Police. He couldn't provide much more information about the case as a result. We just can't release any details that could jeopardize the case, he said. We don't know 100% what did occur, so we have to look at it from all approaches. And with a case like this, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yes, I know we've got this kind of big factor in terms of the family dispute aspect, but the statistics of disappearances that close to home and around bus stops are substantial as well. We're going to touch on that a little bit as we finish up the video here. But the department has received a variety of tips and messages on the case through email, social media posts, and phone calls over the past month. He said investigators are following up on the tips that come in, and he encouraged anyone who believes they've seen Ramirez to call Syracuse police as soon as possible so the tip can be investigated. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children elaborated on a need for awareness. Many missing children are missing in plain sight. They may have been abducted by a family member, run away with friends, or they may be living down the street from you, said John Bischoff, Vice President of NCMEC's Missing Children Division. We are likely to encounter them in our daily lives, and that's why it's so important to be aware. Now that actually raises something for me. Thinking about this aspect that we do know about, she had a boyfriend living in a different state, was told she couldn't contact him. From what I've seen, it's actually part of a court order. Somehow gets a phone, debatable if it's the aunt or not, doesn't matter. She gets another line of communication. Is she still speaking with him through that line of communication? What do you guys think? What do you think the odds are there? And then on top of that, if she does leave home because she's decided to, she doesn't want to live by these rules that are being imposed upon her, do you think that is to free her up to enable her to be closer to her boyfriend or to reestablish communication with him again? I would just think that there's a very good chance, if she did leave of her own accord, that he has at least heard from her. And we're not seeing that as well. Of course, we're talking about a 15-year-old, so the information kind of tightens up when we talk about people that young. But I'm pretty sure that law enforcement would come out with a, we know that she's made contact with the young man. We don't know where she is. We still need your help. Some message along those lines. And we're really not hearing that. Now, there is the possibility that I guess she wanted to leave her home situation, but also leave behind the things that had been seemingly taken from her. which also includes she seems to really love her aunt as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at just some pieces of the letters. I'll have links to them down below so you guys can check them out. But, I don't want to get too much into the accusations that are part of these letters as well, because she's trying to convince the judge that she shouldn't be living with her father. Dear Judge, I'm writing to you today to let my voice be heard in this court. I do not feel safe in my mother's home. I'm not safe with Anthony Ramirez. And it's kind of strange because for the remainder of the letter, she never refers to him as her father. She always calls him Anthony Ramirez. And I'm honestly not certain. It makes me wonder if he might be legally her father. But I'm wondering if there's a different biological father that comes into play here, or if this is just a 14-year-old trying to point out, well, I'm not going to call you dad. You're not my dad, or something like that. I don't know. But it's just weird to me that she calls her mother, despite the fact that she says she doesn't feel safe living with her either. But her father, she calls by his proper name. And I just want to put that out there, because if there is a biological father, if Anthony Ramirez is not the biological father, is that another potential aspect in terms of investigation that they're looking into? Is that how we get one of these other sites like Georgia to pop in? Is that, potentially something around that? I don't know. We've seen other cases where, biological parents can come into play. I don't know if that's really what we have here, but just the phrasing kind of stuck out to me about this letter. The last few months at home and around Anthony Ramirez have been traumatizing. I only feel safe and happy when I'm with my aunt, Alyssa Sands. I can go to school and not worry about what's going to happen when I'm with my aunt. She's also going to put me back in dance, and I'm very excited about it. My mom took me abruptly out of dance in December. She then continues and essentially tries to make her case for the types of abuse that she's going through at home with her parents. But then she continues here at the end of the letter, please let me stay with my aunt Alyssa so I can move forward with being safe and happy. When I was 8 years old, I had to testify in court against Anthony Ramirez. I could do it again if I needed to. Certainly some very serious feelings that are going on here. But I was also kind of concerned. I mean, like I mentioned, my parents split up when I was 14. And what I understood at the time was a 14-year-old basically kind of gets to make their own call in terms of where they go. And from what I can see for Indiana as well, that's certainly true. But we have a different consideration here because she's not choosing between the two parents. She's choosing to be with someone other than her two parents. And I think that's kind of the stopping block here. But here at Cordell.com, when can my child decide which parent to live with? It says, until your child reaches the age of 18, the court will make a determination as to custody. However, at age 14, consideration is given to the child's wishes by the court when making this determination. But like I pointed out, that's a parent-to-parent situation. That's not, I want to go live with a different family member altogether. So I know I'm not the only one, and people on Web Sleuths also agreeing. They're conflicted in terms of how do you feel about this case when you're reading about the things that she's saying that she's gone through, her wanting to be somewhere else, and then the court effectively saying, no, you're going to live with your parents, and your mom ultimately gets to decide where you stay. Peppery here says, if she voluntarily left, she probably has zero motivation to be found and placed back into all the drama she's been exposed to recently. She seems like a smart girl and likely knows the judge will enforce the custody order. And I think that's true. She may even fear receiving a punishment from one or more sides. I think this dear child just wants to be safe and practice ballet and doesn't know a better way to protect herself other than getting far away from all the fighting. That's what keeps me thinking she's okay somewhere. And that wasn't the other message. There's other people that are saying, I'm honestly hoping someone's hiding her. I'm honestly hoping that she's safe. Unfortunately, when the courts didn't listen to her wishes, in her eyes, they threw her to the wolves. She's desperate. Desperate teens do desperate things. But despite all that, I do think there's the other side of this coin, the possibility of an abduction. And here at the Observer Dispatch, we've got some information to see if that could fit in this situation as well. A recent analysis of 5 years worth of data from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children found that children are most likely to be the victim of abduction when they are walking to and from school or school-related events. Pretty direct. Among the reported trends, 38% of attempted abductions occurred while a child was walking to or from school, riding a school bus, or riding a bicycle. 37% occurred between 2 and 7 p.m. on a weekday. So that's a little bit of the outlier. I wish I could have found the original to see what the rest of the stats are on the time frames, just to see where the morning hours kind of kick in. I know with the few cases that we've talked about recently about young people being abducted, morning hours certainly seems to be a time for that to occur as well, at least with the cases we've covered here. 43% involved children ages 10 through 14. So we're certainly tapping pretty strong on a few different conditions here. But then this one's probably the biggest. 72% of attempted abduction victims were female. President Ernie Allen said the findings are supported by a national incidence study conducted by the Federal Justice Department several years ago. Abductions, especially stranger abductions, make up a very small percentage of the missing children cases reported each year, according to data from the State Missing and Exploited Children Clearinghouse. About 1% of the 19,512 cases reported in 2009 were recorded as abductions. And of those 199 cases, all but 2 involved either a family member or an acquaintance. So it's weird because even when we look at the abduction statistics, we're seeing some strong indicators. It looks like it could be. But when we're seeing for the cases that are recorded as abductions, the vast majority, like 99% of them, wind up being either family members or acquaintances. And it's an extremely small number that is people that are just completely unknown to the victim. The center's review found 84% of would-be victims rescued themselves from an attempted abduction by kicking, screaming, running away, or otherwise calling attention to what was happening. The other 16% were rescued by a parent or Good Samaritan. The most powerful thing about the data is, if you look at how kids evaded these abductions, they protected themselves with their heads, Allen said. They recognized a dangerous situation and got away from it. And in a way, I'm kind of wondering, is that what we're looking at with this case? Did she feel like her home life was that dangerous and she had to get away from it? Or are we looking at the other side of this conversation, an abduction that happened to a young woman on the way to school? And I'm still split. Just right down the middle. I know I've referred to the Nancy Grace podcast in a few places in today's video. I'll have a link to that in the description box down below, as well as all the sources for everything that we've looked into together here today. But this case also reminds me of another case, Polly Klaas. Of course, we know that was a tragic outcome when a 12-year-old was kidnapped. The Polly Klaas Foundation actually has a post at polyklaas.org specifically for Aaliyah Ramirez. And while we do support the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children monthly here at the channel, Polly Klaas we don't support on a monthly basis, but we do make donations to them, and I think this is a good time to do it in honor of this case. So we're going to make a donation to the Polly Klaas Foundation on behalf of myself and my amazing supporters. Thank you to everyone that contributes through Patreon, PayPal, buying merchandise over at Lord and Arts. We really appreciate your helping us do things like this. So a donation to the Polly Klaas Foundation in Aaliyah's honor will be made just as soon as I'm done filming today's video. Where did you wind up, Brain Scratchers? What side of this are you on? And quite frankly, is there another side? We keep talking about this like there's only 2 possible outcomes. Maybe there's something else at play here that we're completely missing. There's aspects of this that feel like there could be a possible grooming situation. I mean, if there is this mystery phone that the father didn't know about, who knows what type of communication could be going on there. There's conversation that I've heard, I know on the podcast and some discussion groups I'm seeing about trafficking being a potential factor in this as well. We've got kind of risk factors for that. We've got her age. I think that's another possibility that could be at play here. But what do you guys think? Let's talk about that in the comments down below. And as always, I ask that we remain respectful. I know this is a tough one. There is a lot of very charged information around this family dispute. There's even a YouTube video where it's a phone call between the aunt and the father, and Aaliyah's in the background, and she's very emotional and she's crying about what's going on. The emotions run extremely high around all this. It's really about trying to focus on what is the best next step that can be taken for helping to bring Aaliyah home safely, and figuring out whatever has to happen to give this girl a shot at living the life that she deserves to live, following the dreams that she deserves to follow. This is a case I've been watching for a while, and I've been hoping that we're just going to hear that, she finally came home. She was found. They're working it out. They've got counseling, blah. It's not coming together in that way. And it's 2.5 months now. This case needs help. Please share it with your friends in the areas that we've talked about. And if you have information, please pick up that phone. The phone number is in the description box down below. Take care, everyone. Have a safe weekend. We will see you here on Monday with a brand new episode of Case Cracked on the Lord and Arts channel.